When you were young, you swore you'd never become like him. Your father, your boss, that older man who smiled politely while quietly surrendering his fire. You promised yourself you'd live differently, you'd stay true, you'd never sell out. But one day, you catch your reflection in a window, and for a second, you see him staring back. The same cautious eyes, the same weary calm, the same man you once pitied, now wearing your face. You tell yourself it's different. You've just matured. You're responsible now. You've got bills to pay, people to protect, a career to manage. But deep down, you can feel it. Something in you has gone quiet. The same voice that once told you to move, to build, to dare, now whispers excuses instead. We like to believe growing up is a victory. But what if it's just a slow surrender? When we're young, we laugh at the men who play it safe. We call them dull, lifeless, tamed. And yet somehow almost every man ends up there. Somewhere between 30 and 50, a switch flips. The dreamer becomes the realist. The rebel becomes the provider. The fire becomes a routine. He calls it wisdom. He calls it maturity. He says he's accepted how life really works. But look closely. He's not at peace. He's numb. The truth is, most men don't stop chasing their dreams because they outgrow them. They stop because they've been taught that staying safe is noble, that the man who risks is reckless, that the man who settles is mature. Society doesn't kill your passion. It rewards you for burying it yourself. Think about it. From the moment you were a boy, you were told what a good man looks like. Be strong, but not too strong. Be confident, but not arrogant. Work hard, but don't question the system. Protect others, but never protect yourself. They didn't teach you how to stay alive inside. They taught you how to behave, and it works. You get the job, the family, the stability. You get the life every responsible man is supposed to want. But it comes with a quiet cost. A deal you didn't know you made. Every compromise, every swallowed word, every time you choose peace over truth, you give up a small piece of yourself, and those pieces don't come back. By the time you realize what's missing, it's hard to tell where you end and the performance begins. You've become the man you once despised, not because you failed, but because you succeeded in becoming exactly what the world wanted you to be. So ask yourself, when did maturity start to mean silence? When did wisdom become the art of lowering your expectations? When did being a man turn into pretending you're fine? This isn't just a personal failure. It's a pattern, a cultural machine that trains men to trade their vitality for approval. A society that praises obedience, calls it responsibility, and hands you a medal for giving up your will. And Nietzsche saw it coming. Long before the modern world taught men to call surrender maturity, he warned that society would worship comfort and mistake it for virtue. He saw how the human spirit, especially the masculine one, could be domesticated, tamed, and labeled wise. So maybe the real question isn't, why do men change? Maybe it's, who taught them to? Nietzsche called it the lie of morality. But in our time, it has another name, the lie of maturity. And until we see that lie for what it is, most men will keep looking in the mirror and finding a stranger who looks a little too familiar. We like to think we choose this path, but most of it is chosen for us long before we know it. From the moment a boy learns what earns him approval, a slow conditioning begins. Smile when you're told. Sit still. Don't cry. Don't shout. Be dependable. Be logical. Be useful. Bit by bit, his raw energy, his wildness, is shaped into something that fits. By the time he becomes a man, the lesson is complete. Stability is maturity. Obedience is strength. Safety is success. He doesn't even need anyone to tell him anymore. He carries the message in his bones. But there's another layer to this story, one wired into the body itself. The human brain is built to seek comfort. It rewards predictability, routine, safety. Every time you choose the familiar over the uncertain, your mind gives you a small chemical prize, dopamine for doing the right thing. And over time, the brain learns. Safety equals satisfaction. Risk becomes pain. Passion becomes danger. That's how most men end up trapped in what psychologists call the comfort loop. You take a stable job to calm your anxiety. You stay quiet in meetings to avoid conflict. You skip the trip, the project, the challenge, just to keep things under control. And each time you do, you're rewarded. You feel safe, respected, even praised, until one day, you can't tell if your life is stable or just stagnant. Society doesn't fight this loop. It reinforces it. It hands you a script called The Responsible Man and expects you to read it without missing a line. Go to school, get a degree, get the job, get married, buy the house, raise the kids, work, retire, die. It's not evil, it's efficient. A civilization built on predictability needs predictable men. The workplace trains you to suppress individuality in exchange for security. Corporations reward compliance over creativity. The system wants good soldiers, not thinkers. And the moment you stop asking why, you're promoted. Even our culture, movies, media, social norms, romanticizes this obedience. The hero who sacrifices his dream for the greater good. The father who swallows his voice to keep the peace. We call them noble. We call them wise. But sometimes wisdom is just fear dressed in polite language. Psychologists have a name for what happens next: identity foreclosure. It means settling into an identity too early, before you've explored who you could be. A man picks a career at 20, marries by 30, buys a house by 40, and suddenly his life is a contract he didn't negotiate. His sense of self stops expanding because change threatens everything he's built. The cost of discovery becomes too high, so he doubles down on the script. He repeats the same lines every day until he starts believing them. I'm fine. This is what being an adult means. This is how life works. But beneath that surface, something in him still aches. Every so often it tries to wake up, the spark, the hunger, the boy who wanted more. But the system has 1,000 ways to lull him back to sleep. A promotion, a vacation, a new gadget, tiny rewards to make sure the machine keeps humming. It's not that men lose their fire. It's that they learn to trade it for comfort, applause, and a steady paycheck. The same way the body adapts to pain, the soul adapts to resignation. And eventually, resignation feels normal. We call it wisdom. We call it patience. We call it being realistic. But really, it's conditioning, social, biological, and emotional. We don't grow into maturity. We're trained into it. And what makes this training so powerful is that it doesn't feel forced. You think you're in control. You think you're choosing stability. You think you're making rational decisions. But underneath, your instincts, your fears, your need for belonging, all of it is quietly steering you toward conformity. That's why Nietzsche didn't see modern life as progress. He saw it as a taming, not of the body, but of the spirit. A civilization that calls obedience virtue and calls the death of the will maturity. So when a man looks at his life and says, I don't know who I am anymore, it's not confusion, it's recognition. He's realizing that what he calls his choices might just be the echoes of everyone else's expectations. The tragedy isn't that men grow up. The tragedy is that they stop growing at all. And that's exactly where Nietzsche enters, because he believed this quiet surrender wasn't an accident. It was the very structure of morality itself, a morality designed to keep you tame, safe, and small. In the next breath, we'll see how he exposed that structure and why he believed that what society calls maturity is nothing more than the refined art of self-domestication. Nietzsche was not a motivational speaker. He didn't tell people to work harder or to dream bigger. He told them to wake up. He believed that the tragedy of modern life wasn't weakness, it was tameness. People who once carried wild, creative energy now wear obedience like armor and call it wisdom. They confuse restraint for virtue, conformity for peace. Nietzsche saw it long before us. He warned that entire civilizations would build moral systems to protect the comfortable and punish the alive. That one day, strength, passion, and individuality would no longer be celebrated, but feared. So when we talk about maturity, Nietzsche would not call it progress. He would call it a symptom. a beautiful word built to disguise a very slow death. Let's break it down through his lens. 5 truths that explain how maturity became a lie. At the center of Nietzsche's philosophy is one idea: the will to power. It's not about control over others. It's the inner drive to create, to expand, to impose meaning on a meaningless world. It's the energy that makes a boy build, explore, and dare before someone teaches him the word impossible. But something happens as he grows. That raw will is not destroyed, it's redirected. Instead of creating, he learns to manage. Instead of building, he learns to maintain. The fire that once reached outward turns inward, guarding what's already been gained. Modern life rewards this transformation. You don't need to be powerful. You just need to look responsible. Keep the job, keep the peace, keep the image, and the world will call you mature. But Nietzsche would say you've only traded one kind of hunger for another. You stopped striving for greatness and started fighting not to lose what little you have. You became careful instead of courageous. And the most dangerous thing about careful men is that they think they're wise when they're only afraid. The will to power doesn't disappear. It's still there, pacing in the basement of your mind. It just no longer builds cities. It builds excuses. Nietzsche believed that morality itself could be an instrument of control. He called it slave morality, the code of the weak built to restrain the strong. In the ancient world, masters admired courage, ambition, and creativity. But the powerless couldn't compete, so they changed the rules. They declared humility a virtue, ambition a sin, and obedience the highest good. And over centuries, this morality spread until no one remembered it was born from resentment. Now, fast forward to modern life. We've simply rebranded it. We no longer say, "Blessed are the meek." We say, "Be humble. Don't make waves. Be realistic. Be nice." The man who stays quiet in a meeting is praised for being professional. The one who never disagrees is called mature. The one who obeys the rules without question is called stable. But Nietzsche would see it differently. He'd say the herd has found a way to domesticate its own members, and it calls the cage virtue. You can tell how deeply this morality runs by how uncomfortable you feel when someone breaks it. The artist who refuses a stable job, the man who quits a safe marriage, the entrepreneur who risks it all again at 50. We don't celebrate them. We shame them. We call them irresponsible, reckless, immature. Because in a world ruled by slave morality, the worst sin isn't failure, it's freedom. The herd praises obedience not because it's good, but because it keeps everyone the same. And sameness feels safe. Nietzsche had a word for what happens when a man resents what he cannot become: resentment. It's the quiet poison that turns weakness into a moral stance. Instead of admitting envy, a man pretends he has chosen the lesser path out of principle. It sounds like this: I could have done that, but I chose stability. I used to be idealistic, but I grew up. I'm not afraid. I'm just being realistic. That's resentment talking. It takes what once was desire and repackages it as dignity. It's the mind's way of making surrender feel noble. Nietzsche saw it everywhere, in priests who couldn't fight, in scholars who couldn't create, in citizens who envied conquerors but called them evil. And he would see it in us today, in the man who mocks the dreamer because he secretly wishes he hadn't stopped dreaming, in the employee who sneers at the risk-taker because deep down he still wants to dare. Resentment makes you feel moral while you rot. It convinces you that you're superior for giving up, that compromise is wisdom, that bitterness is balance. It whispers that your comfort is a choice, when really it's a cage lined with good intentions. This is the psychological foundation of the modern man's pride. He mistakes his restraint for integrity, his caution for strength, his cynicism for experience. He doesn't realize that beneath the surface he is powered by resentment, a silent revenge against the life he was too afraid to pursue. Nietzsche would call that the ultimate tragedy of maturity. Not that men lose their fire, but that they learn to justify its absence. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche described two forces that live inside every human being: the Apollonian, the force of order, logic, and discipline, and the Dionysian, the force of chaos, instinct, and passion. Great art, he said, is born from the tension between the two. When they balance, a man is both wild and wise. But our world doesn't want balance. It wants control. It celebrates the Apollonian and fears the Dionysian. It rewards order, calculation, and predictability. It punishes instinct, emotion, and risk. So men learn to suppress their Dionysian side. They trade guitars for spreadsheets, boxing gloves for keyboards, danger for deadlines. They stop dancing. They stop building things that scare them. They start managing instead of creating. And soon, their lives become beautifully arranged and spiritually empty. Society calls this stability. Nietzsche would call it decay. Because when a man loses touch with his Dionysian nature, he doesn't become peaceful. He becomes bored. He feels a quiet hunger he can't name, an ache that no salary or status can feed. Order without passion is not maturity. It's just silence disguised as peace. A life that's perfectly structured on the outside but hollow at the core. You can't tame the Dionysian forever. If you bury it, it will find another way out, through anger, addiction, or apathy. The body might obey. The soul never does. Nietzsche posed a terrifying question. What if you had to live this exact life again and again for eternity? Every day, every choice, every silence repeated forever? Would you say yes, or would the thought crush you? He called this idea the eternal recurrence, not as a belief in reincarnation, but as a test, a mirror held up to your choices. If you would not willingly live this life again, then something in you has already died. Imagine waking up tomorrow to relive every compromise you made in the name of maturity. Every time you stayed quiet instead of honest. Every time you chose comfort over creation. Every year of careful stability, looped for eternity. Would that feel like peace or punishment? Nietzsche didn't ask this to condemn. He asked it to awaken. Because the man who can look at his life and say, yes, I'd live it again, has achieved what Nietzsche called amor fati, the love of fate. A life so honest, so fully lived, that even its pain feels sacred. The rest of us call our loop responsibility. But maybe it's just fear we've learned to schedule. Through Nietzsche's eyes, modern maturity is not growth. It's the slow taming of the human will, a cultural hypnosis that convinces men to call obedience virtue and fear wisdom. He saw that society doesn't need chains to control you. It only needs praise. If it can make you proud of your own submission, it never has to threaten you again. So before we talk about consequences, ask yourself one thing. When the world applauds your maturity, is it celebrating your strength or your surrender? Because what comes next is the cost of that surrender. When a man gives up his fire, the world does not punish him. It rewards him. He gets the promotion, the respect, the quiet nods of approval. People call him dependable, solid, mature. They tell him he's doing the right thing. But late at night, when the house is silent and the screens are dark, he feels something else, an emptiness that has no name, a dull ache that no success seems to cure. It's not pain. It's the absence of pain. A kind of inner deadness that grows where his hunger used to live. This is the hidden cost of domestication. When you kill your chaos, you also kill your vitality. He wakes up each day to the same routine, the same drive, the same desk, the same polite conversations. Everything works, nothing lives. He scrolls, he eats, he sleeps. The body continues, but the soul is gone. Nietzsche would say this is what happens when life becomes too orderly. The man doesn't break. He petrifies. He becomes a monument to who he once was. And that deadness does not stay contained. It bleeds into everything he touches. In his marriage, passion fades into partnership, then into politeness. Two people who once couldn't stop touching now communicate through obligation. They don't fight because there's nothing left to fight for. Peace has replaced connection. And peace in this case feels a lot like distance. He doesn't cheat because he wants to. He cheats because he wants to feel something. He drinks not because he enjoys it, but because it fills the quiet for a while. At work, he performs well enough to keep his title. He delivers what's asked. He meets expectations. But the spark, The madness that once made him ambitious has been replaced by a cautious professionalism. He no longer builds, he maintains. He no longer wants to win, he just doesn't want to lose. Society calls this success. Nietzsche would call it exhaustion with a good reputation. And what's worse is that it spreads. Children learn by imitation. They watch their fathers trade their fire for safety and call it love. They grow up thinking maturity means silencing themselves. And so the cycle continues. Men teaching boys how to shrink politely. Sometimes the suppressed Dionysian energy bursts through. It can't stay buried forever. You see it in midlife crises, reckless affairs, sudden collapses, men quitting everything without warning. It's not madness, it's recoil, a desperate attempt to remember they're still alive. Nietzsche once said that when a man cannot create, he destroys. If he cannot affirm life, he will turn against it. And that's why so many modern men destroy quietly, through alcohol, apathy, or isolation. There's a man who used to play guitar. Now he scrolls through videos of other people playing. There's a man who used to write poetry. Now he answers emails about budgets. There's a man who used to believe in something. Now he believes in just being realistic. Their stories are different, but their eyes are the same. Calm, controlled, empty. The tragedy of domestication is not that men become weak. It's that they become ghosts. Visible but no longer present. They smile at family photos while quietly mourning the man they might have been. They tell themselves this is what life demands, that everyone settles eventually. That peace matters more than passion. But peace without purpose isn't peace. It's paralysis. Nietzsche warned that when the spirit forgets how to dance, it doesn't become moral. It becomes mechanical. And a mechanical man can survive for decades without ever truly living a single day. So when we look around and see a generation of men who seem calm but lost, content but hollow, we're not seeing failure. We're seeing the cost of calling fear maturity. It's the quiet suffering of a life lived according to expectation. A life where every instinct has been negotiated away, where every wild impulse has been tamed into routine. And what's left, when all the fire is gone, is not wisdom, but the soft exhaustion of a man who has forgotten what it feels like to be alive. Nietzsche never wanted men to live without rules. He wanted them to live without cages. He believed that real maturity isn't about restraint. It's about transformation, turning the chaos within you into creation, not control. To him, the highest form of man wasn't the obedient one or the successful one, but the one who could overcome himself. Self-overcoming, that's the essence of the Übermensch. Not someone who dominates others, but someone who refuses to let fear dictate his life. Someone who keeps growing, even when comfort whispers, "You've done enough." So what does that look like for men today? It starts with redefining what maturity actually means. Maturity is not the absence of passion. It's the mastery of it. It's the ability to carry your fire responsibly, to be wild inside, but grounded enough to aim it somewhere meaningful. That begins with reclaiming your will to power. Find something that feeds your vitality instead of draining it. Not a promotion, not applause, something real, a project, a craft, a purpose that demands your full presence. The point isn't to chase success, it's to feel alive again. Set aside an hour a day to build something that's yours. Write, train, study, create. Do it not because it pays, but because it reawakens the part of you that refuses to die quietly. And when you feel the resistance, the voice that says, "Don't bother," that's your cue. That's the old morality trying to pull you back to safety. Step through it. But awakening isn't just about force, it's also about honesty. Carl Jung called it integrating the shadow, facing the parts of yourself you've hidden to stay likable. The envy, the rage, the regret. You don't have to destroy them. You have to understand them, because everything you suppress eventually rules you from the dark. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Tell the truth to at least one person who won't flinch. That's how the unconscious loses its grip. Then, do something Aristotle understood better than anyone. Turn virtue into habit. Don't wait for clarity or motivation. Choose one small act of creation or courage every day and repeat it until it becomes who you are. Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect in motion. And once in a while, test yourself with Nietzsche's eternal question. If you had to live this exact month again, would you say yes? If the answer is no, change something. Not tomorrow. Now. Because a man doesn't become free all at once. He becomes free one honest act at a time. You don't have to burn your life down to start over. You only have to stop pretending that comfort is the goal. Maturity isn't the grave of your impulses. It's the altar where you offer them up and rebuild them into strength. The world doesn't need more obedient men. It needs men who remember how to live before they die. So ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to stop becoming the man you once despised? Start small. Start today. Because the longer you wait, the quieter that voice inside becomes. And one day, if you're not careful, you won't hear it at all.